Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda.
And I'm Jake Bennett.
And I'm Jess Archer.
And welcome to episode 115 of the North Meets South Web podcast.
I think Jess has the funnest name to say in an Australian accent. Jess Archer. Here's what's embarrassing. I was actually walking downstairs getting ready to record, and I said out loud, "Hey, I'm Jess Archer," because I thought it was like... Because I thought it was going to be so funny to hear it myself saying it out loud. And then I was like, wait a second, I don't sound very good at this. And Michael and Jess have both confirmed I have a really bad Australian accent. So my apologies, but I just thought it was hilarious. Hey, and I have to like, I have to try and...
But it's not an Australian accent.
Yeah, I have to overcompensate because I'm the only American. I'm the only one in the, let's see, am I in the Western Hemisphere, right? On this show. I've got two Aussies in the Down Under. I'm the only one in the Northern Hemisphere too.
Typical American thinking that he's the Western Hemisphere, isn't it?
Well,
I don't know what hemisphere I'm in. I'm in the
only be north and south. Like,
yeah.
Is it? I don't know. Is it there? What is there? Is a Western? There's got to be Western, isn't there?
The hemisphere is like the.
I know. It's like half of it, but like where? No, isn't it divided along like the? There's like another line. It's like the prime meridian or something.
It's called the International Date Line.
Yeah.
And there's like, there's the where Greenwich is, whatever that one is. But there's International Date Line, and that's about it, really.
The podcast is literally North meets South, so like
it's true. Yep, I thought about that afterwards. Yeah, I'm the only one in the Northern Hemisphere representing here, so I'm trying to make up for it. I'm sure you guys.
It's usually the other way around. It's usually two of you Northerners and just me.
Yep. And indeed, Jess, the other Jess Elite, was on our very first episode of the Vim Throwdown. And then we were lonely last episode, just me and Michael again. And now this time we have Jess Archer. So Jess, thanks for coming on the show.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, you are also a Vim master. And I don't want to actually do your introduction, so I'm going to let you do your own introduction. Jess, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? For people who don't know who you are, give us a quick intro.
Don't know who I am. I'm a full stack developer, obviously working with like Laravel, all that sort of stuff. I can also share that I am now going to be a Laravel employee.
Yay.
No. What? Awesome.
So,
that's awesome.
I've been given the go ahead to tweet about it. I haven't tweeted about it yet, but I will probably tweet before this episode comes out. But maybe not. Maybe you'll hear it here first.
You heard it here first. Hey, we heard it here first. So that's what's important.
That's right.
Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
We should talk about that for a bit before we jump into the Vim
We
stuff.
should. Absolutely, we should. Yeah, let's hear about it. So what's the position? What's the pitch?
So basically, the way Taylor kind of put it was, I'll be helping out with like Laravel R&D. So
cool.
Research and development, skunkworks kind of stuff on the open source side of things. And then also helping out a bit with Forge and doing a little bit of support stuff for Forge as well, because he likes to kind of share the load of support amongst everyone. So, and I also think it's important to do things like support to actually talk to the users, because how else are you going to make the software better if you don't actually talk to the people using it? So
that's a great point. That's pretty cool too, because I know Taylor sort of is on that side of things as well, right? So it's not that he's the only one on that side of things. It seems like all of the members of the Laravel team are sort of on the R&D side of things, right? You think of like Nuno, and he's really pushing like the Laristan stuff, and he's like the CLI guy, and he's got Pest that he kind of created. And then this seems like an interesting spot for you, Jess, because I know, one of the things I know you're really interested in is, I think like learning new things with that whole deal. What's that YouTuber guy that you got featured on his channel? Mark Rober? Yeah, Mark Rober. Yeah, and like so you love like tinkering and playing with new things and like learning new stuff, and so that seems like a really, really cool fit for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've been doing a lot of like frameworky type stuff at my current job, so I feel like my mind is in the right space to be building stuff for developers. So yeah.
That's cool.
That's excellent. Congratulations. Way to go.
Thank you.
Nicely done. Absolutely.
Cool. And when do you start?
I think like April 18th.
There's still a few weeks.
So once my notice period is up where I'm at now,
it's like 3 weeks.
Start the next week, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and also, does that make you the first official female employee of Laravel?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, it depends.
Are you saying they've got an unofficial female employee?
Well, Abigail.
But also, is it Tatiana that does the release
Mhm.
notes and all that sort of stuff?
True.
Like,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's like officially an employee, but
Right.
I reckon she is. I don't know, but
It's close. It's
That's good.
close. Anyway,
That's
it's
cool.
and Abigail would be employee number 1 in my brain. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
she's
It's a
she's
twofer.
co-founder, I suppose. Yeah.
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 Twofer. You've got a female and an Australian, so watch out.
Yes,
Yeah.
We're coming for
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
And a Vimmer
Oh, that's
as well.
and a Vimmer. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I wonder, is there any other Vimmers on the team? I'm curious.
I think that most people probably are familiar with Vim, but I don't
Yeah.
know if there's anyone that's like their main editor.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
full
that's what-
time.
yeah,
I know
that's
that,
what I
I know
mean.
that Nuno like dips in and out every now and then.
Sure.
And I've spoken to him about Vim a bit now and then, but yeah, I don't think there's any. I think they're mostly Sublime users.
Yeah.
Jess, and also I do have a recommendation for you right out of the box if you want to hear it.
Here we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Are you ready? All right. So database backups in Forge are amazing. They're great. I love them. Use them. We pay for the business plan so we can have all our backups, and they work awesome almost all the time. However, 2 beefs. Number 1, if I have multiple databases on a server and I add a new database, it would be really nice if it was able to just say, add that to the backups. Now, I know that like that's sort of like an implicit like acceptance of something that you may not want to back up, right? Maybe it's just like a test thing that you're throwing on there or something.
Yeah.
Although I would probably suggest separating your staging from your production. But in any case, right, for me, that is something that I've made that mistake before, where I go in and I created a new application and I threw it onto that same box because we just have this massive box that's managed by Forge, but it's actually internal. It's like this 32 gigabyte memory, 16 processors, insane server. And so we've got like all of our applications running on that and all the databases back up great. But when I add a new application, if I forget to add that to the backups, it doesn't get included in the backups, of course, right? And so I asked James Brooks, was like, is there an option to just say back up all the databases? And he's like, no, there isn't. There's not a way to do that right now. So that would be one cool thing. That would be awesome. The other cool thing would be like you have the ability right now to do a backup with like retention periods.
Yeah.
But you cannot say, so like if I there's a possibility I could have 2 backup jobs running at the same time, right? If I have like daily backups and then I have weekly backups and then I have monthly backups and then I have yearly backups. And the reason I have these different backups is actually only because of a different retention period. That's the only reason I want, right? I actually back up my databases every single hour, all of them, back them up every hour. But I have to have different jobs that run because I want to have different retentions on those backups. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I'm backing them up every hour, but inevitably, if I'm going to back up for a weekly backup once a week on Mondays, it's gonna hit on one of those hours when I'm already doing an hourly backup anyway, right? This is a hard problem to solve. It's not super simple, but there was another product that we used before we switched over to Forge that did this for us, which would basically just say, run the backups every hour and then just handle the retention outside of that, right? Which was interesting.
You want
You want
like
it
the
to
hourly
roll up.
ones for a day, the daily ones for a week, the weekly ones for a month.
You got it.
monthly ones
That's
for a
exactly
year,
right.
and the yearly ones for 10 years.
So what are the monthly
Yeah, so
ones
it's-
actually doing when they back up? It's just doing the same as an hourly one?
That's exactly right. The only
Yeah,
difference is that you have to do that so that you can set a custom retention on that
Mhm.
particular backup, right? Otherwise, it just gets, you only have hourly backups for 7 days,
Mm.
and then after the hourly backups are gone, which they get deleted with the retention, you wouldn't have anything anymore after that, unless you also set up a weekly backup, which is, every 7 days and lasts for 6 weeks. And then you have monthly backups, which are once a month, but they last for 3 months or whatever it is,
So you can't specify the
So-
offset when the backups run. So you can't
That's
say like
correct.
run the hourly ones at 0 and the weekly ones.
Well, you
at-
could. No, you could. I'm sorry, you could do that. But I guess what I'm saying is it seems redundant, if you will. Like I'm
Mhm.
already doing the hourly backups always.
Mm.
So I could
You
just
want
specify.
one of the hourly ones as also a daily and maybe a weekly if it's happening
You got
to
it.
run it or whatever. Yeah.
You got it. Because on occasion I'll have this one that runs at 11 o'clock and like that's like the magic hour when they overlap. And that one ends up failing. You know what I mean? Once a week. Like there's a couple jobs that run at 11 o'clock or something and it just like blows up and I get a report in an email like, hey, it stopped. So
Is that because
I
like
could
a
probably
database
fix-
loss or something?
Well, yeah, maybe it's because it's trying to write both of them out at the same time or something. It's trying to dump them out at the same time. I'm not exactly sure, but it fails. And I get an email like only at 11 o'clock. So it's like something weird. Anyway, those are 2 ideas right off the bat for you. Nothing to do with what we're going to be talking about today, but I just thought those are cool ideas just to put in your little bag.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be able to go in with some stuff in my little bag.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few ideas of my own, but yeah, I like those ones.
Okay,
Excellent.
cool. Yeah, and yeah, we do some of that with our AWS backups on other stuff, but anyway, they've got an interesting setup on AWS if you're interested in researching some of that. They've got some cool stuff set up there.
Sounds to me like you just need RDS, which has point-in-time snapshot recovery. Done.
We used RDS and it was okay, but the latency was killer. We would have had to set up like a point-to-point or something like that to reduce the latency, and it was just not worth it at that point. So anyway.
Really?
It's
surprising,
yes.
Considering that like AWS has a POP near you. So I'm surprised at the latency.
I suppose if I had my box in AWS and I was also using RDS, it would probably make sense, but I don't.
Offsite, yeah.
You got it. Exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, well, it sounds like a you problem.
It is me problem, but we've got it solved, so it's fine. Okay.
Yep.
One other thing real quick before we get into the Vim goodness, okay? I apologize to everybody who's out there listening. So far, it's been technical in nature, so I'm not going to apologize that much. Here comes the non-technical.
Okay.
Have you guys heard of this show called Severance?
Yes.
No.
Apple TV Plus.
Yeah. I've heard
Severance.
about it. I've been a friend of mine keeps recommending it to me, and I said I don't have time for all of these shows.
You not have time for this show.
I've heard that it's good. I've seen like some clips and stuff, and it seems like my kind of weird, but
it is very cool.
For it. I don't know. The Halo series just started, so I started watching that, and
oh, cool. Yeah.
A lot more violent than I thought it was going to be.
Ooh, all right. I'll have to start watching that. Okay, so Severance is, you don't really know necessarily why. Sort of my assumption is that the type of work that they're doing is so sensitive in nature that they don't want them to be able to talk about it outside of work. So let's just say that's the premise, okay?
Okay.
It could also be like a work-life balance thing, right? But the idea is that they insert this microchip into your brain, and when you go to work, that microchip is activated, and what it does is it severs your memories so that any memories that you have from outside of work are completely inaccessible to you. And the only memories that you have access to are the memories that you've made inside of work, inside of the building, right? So you can operate as a normal human inside of work, but the only things that you know are things that happened at work. And then the same is true when you leave work. When you leave work, that microchip is turned off, and now the only memories that you have access to are memories from outside of work. So here's the trippy part, right?
That's not the trippy part.
that is trippy, but here's why it's a little bit weirder. As a person who is from the outside going to work, you get to work, and the last thing you remember is going into the doors. That's your last memory. And your next memory is leaving the building. You don't ever go to work, right? You're just living outside of work because your memory is basically stopped. The person on the inside, their first memory is walking in the building, and their last memory is walking out, and then the next thing they know, they're back in the building. They never leave work.
Oh, that sucks for that person.
Right? Right? So they actually have the outie, which is the person on the outside, and the innie, which is the person on the inside. That's like, it's almost like they're different people.
Do they know? Do like the individuals know that? Okay.
They opt in to this procedure. This is something that they volunteer for.
So they have memory of the procedure, and they know that.
Well, the person on the outside does.
Right.
The person on the outside has memory of the procedure.
Oh.
But the person on the inside has no.
Because then
there's some
that goes to leave work never
leaves.
Are they just constantly confused?
No, they know what's happening, but they don't really have a choice in it, because all they have to do is their person from the outside chose to show up to work again because they have no memory of what happened at work. So you can understand how it create some really interesting moral dilemmas, as well as some really creepy, and there's also all sorts of creepy stuff going on too. So, and you have no idea what they do on the inside, and neither do they. They're not sure what they're doing. So it adds this whole other layer of like Lost sort of, esque.
I'm watching.
It's amazing. It's really, really good. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what I could do to add to this universe because it's actually sort of undersold. I don't feel like there's a lot of people into it yet. It's not massively popular. But there are some people who are doing some cool stuff. So like Lumen is the name of the company they're working for. So there's a Lumen.industries that somebody just made, which is like a website, but like it's in its infancy. These sorts of things are not out there yet. So it's like, I want to like jump on that bandwagon and get in there before other people do, because I think it could be really fun. So anyway.
Christopher Walken's in this. All right. I mean,
he is. And it's Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller is the director, which is crazy because you think of him as like the comedy guy, but this is like his brainchild, I guess. It's really amazing.
Interesting.
So,
all right.
Yes. Okay.
I
will digress.
I'm
sorry. Sorry, Jess Archer. I know this is not why you're here.
Oh, there are only 7 episodes in. All right, that's not a big commitment to catch up.
Yeah. Maybe it is why you're here. You know, it's nice to have you on the show. It's nice to have another person on the show every once in a while. So, thanks for enduring my chatter. Michael usually has to do it all alone.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I normally listen to it anyway. But normally it's like 1.5 speed. So.
Sure, exactly. Okay, well, should we catch up from where we talked about so far? So really, in the first show, Jesse and Michael walked me through what Vim is. Some of it gave me a history lesson. We sort of landed on NeoVim as being the new hotness. And so, Jess, are you on the NeoVim train?
I am on the NeoVim train, yes.
Okay. Before we get too far into it, I would love to hear about your Vim story. Have you always been a Vim user? You know, did you start out using Vim? How did you land on Vim? Have you used other editors? What's your sort of Vim journey been like?
So I started off doing a lot of like Linux server-y sorts of things and was using like Nano and Pico and all these. And I had a friend that used Vim and I just thought it looked like the coolest thing in the world. So that was kind of what got me into it. Then I became a web developer and was, coding in Vim. And it took me quite a few years to actually use Vim properly, like use the text objects and motions and all this sort of stuff, like use the language it provides. I pretty much for like the first year, I reckon I was like insert mode, arrow keys, escape and save kind of person. And it wasn't until I discovered, like Michael was saying in a previous episode, the language that Vim gives you to describe the changes you want to make to a document. And the three concepts of motions, text objects, and commands, and the way you combine those together. And so, I kind of have been using Vim for most of my development career. I switched to Sublime for maybe like a year and then went back to Vim. So
that's really cool. You mentioned motions, which I understand, I think.
Yep. So,
commands, which I get, like emotions are like the, moving around the keyboard or moving around your text with different, J, K, L, 5J, or GG, capital G, whatever, top on, whatever. Is that what you mean completely by motions? Am I missing anything?
So motion is like wherever your cursor is. If you do a motion key, it will effectively move your cursor to the end of the word or the start of the word or the next double quote. So it's a movement kind of operation. And so if you combine that with a command or an operation, you can say delete until the end of the word. So it'll go from your cursor position and you can say DW and that will delete until the end of the word from memory. I find it hard sometimes to remember like what the letters are because it's all muscle memory now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's like trying to explain to somebody how to add two numbers. You're like, I just know kind of how it works intuitively. And then you have to figure out, like, when you've got kids where they're like, how do you add 2 and 5? Like, how do you, you know what I mean? It's just weird because you don't have to think about it most of the time.
I'm not looking forward to that stage of like having to teach that kind of stuff because you really, and we talk about it, as developers and as, people looking to mentor or teach or put out, video in the world, that the best time to try and teach is when you're learning it yourself because that's when it's fresh and when it's most obvious to make it click. Whereas to go back now as someone who like knows this stuff to then try and teach it to a beginner, you forget how much you know as just implied knowledge. And so it gets really tricky to sort of come back to that and start from scratch. So, you might find yourself now teaching sort of more high level concepts and more advanced things and so on and so forth. But because you're learning it for the first time, it's easier to kind of teach it as a, even though it is an advanced topic. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So you had said that covers motions and commands, right? So motion is like it moves you around. Command is it does something. The one other thing you mentioned is text objects. What do you mean by that exactly?
So Are you familiar yet with like you can do DW, but then you can do DIW?
Delete inward. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So IW is a text object. So it doesn't. It's not about moving your cursor. It's around referring to a whole object. So if you're in the middle of a word and you do DIW, it's basically going to delete the whole word you're in, no matter where your cursor is inside there.
Nice.
And so motions and text objects, they can kind of feel very similar, but I think it's like, for me at least, it's been key to kind of see them as different things, because one of them's kind of just moving the cursor, whereas the other one is operating on a concept, a sentence, a paragraph, inside quotes, inside parentheses, all this sort of stuff.
Is there a way to say like delete the entire line, the entire sentence or paragraph, like you had mentioned, like when you said like, like is a paragraph an object? Okay.
Yeah. So you've got AP and IP. So like, and the A versus the I is, to me, like the mnemonic is around versus in. So if I say delete inward, it kind of deletes only the word. Whereas if I say delete A, like DAW, it's delete around the word. So it'll also take a space.
The spaces and stuff. Okay. Interesting.
Talking about one that's got like quotes. So it's got something on both sides.
Right.
If I say DI single quote, it'll delete everything inside the single quotes. Whereas if I say DA single quote, it'll delete everything, including the
quotes.
Around.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, that's helpful.
We've got IP and AP. Yeah, there's all sorts of text objects, and they all kind of follow that same I versus A prefix.
And what delineates a paragraph? Like, what is it? A line return? Is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Typically, if there's a break between things, and that's handy. Even I find myself doing a lot with visual selections, where you could do VIP, and then you can like use semicolon to repeat that sort of thing, and it'll go to the next paragraph. So you could pick up blocks of code. So if you're inside like a function block and you want to visually select some lines to then extract a method or extract a expression or something like that, you can use that to repeat the operation. You can use comma to then go back to the previous one if you've highlighted too many times and things like that. So it makes it really quick and easy. And this is, where we keep coming back to like Vim is a text editor. And so it's all about being as quick and efficient as possible to edit text. So these kinds of things coupled with the add-ons and the plugins and things like that to make it a fully fledged IDE is just what makes it, for mine, a much quicker, much more fluent environment for writing code regularly.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting, Michael, because like when you say the VIP and then you say semicolon, that's almost like multi-cursor selection. It's almost what it feels like to me, right? If I select something in Sublime or in then I press Command D, it's like select the next instance of that, right? And then you said comma, it goes back one. It's like, okay, well, I did too many, go back one.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And then can you like change all those at the same time? You go to VIP and then semicolon, semicolon,
this is more
and then
for selection. I think for changing things, it's actually something Jesse taught me recently. Actually, is when you're doing changing text and things like that, you can do like :S and then you slash and then whatever you're finding and then slash what you're replacing with. And then if you go /G, that will replace it globally within the buffer. But if you go /GC, then you're asked to confirm. So there are situations where like I've got ID. I did this the other day, actually. I had ID and I needed to change the ID property to ID method call, but not every single instance of it. So doing like the string replace /GC meant that I could go through one by one in that file and say, I need to do that one. Yes, 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 no, no, yes, no, through that whole file. So it gives you the ability to kind of selectively do that. Where I think with multi-cursors, it's just like next, next, next. And you've got to kind of bunch them all up. You can't sort of say, no, I don't want this one. I want the next one kind of thing.
Yeah, you can't. Correct.
So, there's that kind of thing where, you're taking the different bits and pieces. And again, you're always stringing them together to work on your text objects or to work on whatever you're working on. I find like with tests, I might want to create a new test. So, I've got a snippet that gives me the test block, and then I can go to a previous test and do like YI opening brace, and that'll grab the whole block from inside the
Is it
function.
yank in brace?
Yank in brace, yep. Grab that whole lot, go down to the new method and hit, P, and that'll paste that whole lot. Rather than sort of like grabbing the whole lot and then having to rename the test and things like that.
Could you say like paste in brackets, PI bracket?
Never tried
Or
it.
like, what
I
would
suppose
you
you
do?
can.
P?
I mean, you
Just-
wouldn't really. I don't.
I guess if
I
you
guess
did
you
if you
can.
did YA bracket, that would yank including the bracket,
It
right?
would, yeah, including the bracket. So you could just do like public function. It does the thing, and then without putting the braces in, and then just hit
Yeah, makes
P, and
sense.
it'll
I gotcha.
drop it all in there. So,
I gotcha. That
I
makes
guess you
sense.
could. I've never. I don't see why it wouldn't work. I've never done it myself, but yeah.
It'll probably just not replace what's in there. It'll probably like maybe add to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings me to my next question, which is I do have other I have like prepared things I want to talk about, but this is just so interesting. I want to just follow some of this. And now I just lost it. What was it? Darn it all. Nope, it's gone. It'll come back to me. It's okay. So the item that I really wanted to spend a little bit of time. Oh, no. I remember what it was. Sorry. Okay. So, you guys have accrued a lot of this knowledge over your career as developers. Like, is this something, is this sort of the format that you typically pick up most of your knowledge in? Is in these sorts of conversations where you're just like chatting with somebody on Twitter and they say, oh, I've got this thing I built actually. You say, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know about that. And then you pull in this library or you pull in this little plugin and like, okay, now I've added the new tool to my arsenal. Or has it been that, there's a particular resource that you've found, or is it just like you read articles and you're just part of the community, so you pick up these little tips and tricks? Or, was there some training that you did? What was it that for you, where did you gain most of your knowledge from? Because it seems like for the vast majority of the people who would maybe be talking about this, you all sort of have this base level knowledge of here's how these particular things work. And then there are additions that you guys all have that you've added to your own sort of repertoire, if you will. But you all sort of have this base understanding of like YIP, YAP. Like you kind of get that, right? And I'm just curious where you where you learned that from.
So for me, it was primarily YouTube videos, I would say. So Ben Orenstein, who found Tuple, he did a lot of Vim videos. Thoughtbot had like Vim meetups for ages, and they recorded them all. So they've had, Chris Toomey, all these sorts of people doing different talks about subjects. So there is a video, I think, that's like Vim as a language. Yeah. So I can find like a bunch of video links if we want to share them. But for me, that's kind of been it's all been YouTube videos.
Yeah. I think the Thoughtbot videos, the stuff that Chris Toomey put out and that Ben Orenstein put out, way back, those are sort of some of the original influences, I think, for me, coming into the social side of programming, where I picked up a lot of stuff. There's also more recently TJ DeVries and the Primogen have got a lot of really good high energy content that's sort of like it's I don't think I've ever seen anyone as excited about anything as the Primogen is about Vim. And so it's infectious if you're like really looking to learn about Vim. But the sort of the baseline stuff, the motions and the objects and all of that is like, I've said this before in this mini series, that those are the things that you must learn. To
that's
be
where I'm at, right?
With Vim. And once you master those things, anything is possible in terms of plugins that you install, or rabbit holes that you go down looking for things. Especially now, like this little community that we have of Vimmers, it's like, I've done this thing, and you'll often have someone say, that's cool, here's another approach to doing that, and perhaps a more efficient one. Like I said the other day that I would typically use the file explorer to get to a directory where I want, and then if the directory doesn't exist, I'll create the directory and then create a new file inside that directory, because using :E to do that doesn't work. But then Jesse pipes up and goes, well, actually, here's a plugin that Jess created that does all that for you, that like it figures out, okay, this directory doesn't exist, so we need to create the directory and then create the file in it. And so, all this kind of stuff that's like sharing it in the open. The Vim community, outwardly, you might think whatever you think of Vimmers, but the Vim users, we're, always sharing, always like helping each other out, just to sort of like get people not up to speed, but to sort of help them along their journey, I guess.
Yeah, and we've got a good community of like Laravel Vimmers, and kind of like focused on doing PHP, Laravel, and the associated languages around that. Yeah. I'm sure there's other communities for other languages, but there is kind of like a niche for a specific language in Vim. And yeah, the Laravel Vim community is awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. So, because here's kind of like what I feel like is, I feel like with PHP Storm, and really with a lot of these other ones, like you kind of get the house to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get your theme, which is like you're picking out the wallpaper and the curtains and stuff, right? And I feel like I tried to strip back down because I realized that like Vim is a whole different beast, right? Like you don't get the house, like you get the blueprints maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to build the foundation first, right? And I'm falling prey to this temptation of like, oh, wouldn't this wallpaper look great in this room? And like I'm picking out the wallpaper and the curtains, and it's like I still haven't built the walls, man. Like
Yeah.
I have got to like figure out what the heck I'm doing to even be effective in moving around this thing before I start like, oh, it's talking about window management and like how do I switch between projects really quickly? And so on these episodes, it feels like, I have a thing I want to talk about, but we get 5 minutes into it and I'm talking about movements again. And it's like, because they're so interesting. I'm like, oh, that's a cool trick. I don't know that. But for you guys, that's all like, oh yeah, this is basics. Like, and so unfortunately, I feel like even into this show, like, and maybe this will be helpful for some other people. Maybe we'll put in the show notes some of these videos that Jess and Michael have talked about just to say like, okay, if you're where I am, point back to this. And like, I've still got some homework to do right now. I do have some questions that I can ask, but, I think recognize that the questions that I'm going to be asking are probably a bit premature in that I still have a lot of work to do on the building of the foundation, right? Like learning the motions, learning the commands, learning what text objects are. And so those are all great things. And it's outside of the context of this show. We don't have time to talk about all of that. And it sounds like these videos will solve that problem for me. But yeah, that's where I'm at. It's like I just feel like there's so much cool stuff that I don't know about. But for you guys, it's like, oh yeah, that's how this works. This is how you do that. And I'm like, still not there yet.
To me, those are the things that make Vim special and what sets it apart from
Totally.
other editors. Like, we can talk about how we set up auto completion and all that, but most people are coming from editors that already have those features. And so trying to convince them of how you can replicate that functionality in Vim is like, well, why would I do that?
Yeah.
And so to me, the why is actually the things Vim provides that other IDEs don't, which is like modal editing is basically like the selling point of Vim for me.
What did you say? Modal editing?
Modal editing. So like editing with modes. So like, you're normally in normal mode and you change to insert mode. And like the whole thing of like you're normally in normal mode. Insert mode is, like you've said on previous episodes, you hop into it, do some things and get out. One analogy I heard for that fits like my brain perfectly is it's like a paintbrush. When you're painting a painting, insert mode is when the paintbrush is actually touching the canvas. But most of the time when you're painting, you're lifting it off the canvas, you're moving it around, you're changing brushes, you're changing paint. All the things when the paint's not on the canvas is normal mode. And it's just, quick stroke, come off and, do some things before you get ready to do your next stroke.
Yeah, that's a great illustration, I think. That's perfect. That's super helpful. And I'm still getting there. Yeah, I find like I'm not automatically pressing escape yet. Because I try to jump into Vim whenever I can. Whenever I have something that's a little bit more trivial, like I don't need to go open up like PHP Storm, I jump into Vim. I try and get into Vim as much as I can. And so I'm getting there. But yeah, I do find that I'm still, I stay in insert mode a little too long and then I'm arrowing around instead of hitting that escape and then jumping around with the keys.
One thing you can do is you can bind your arrow keys to do no ops. So your arrow keys won't even do anything. And I did
that's kind of cool.
For a long time, I was an arrow key user and I wanted to get the muscle memory of HJKL. So I just no opt the arrows and forced myself to it. The thing is once you get used to the arrow keys, the HJKL keys, the next thing is to actually stop using those because there's more efficient movements. Because those move you one direction at a time. And holding in a key or pushing it lots of times is a bit of an anti-pattern with Vim because there's normally a motion that will get you there faster because you can look ahead and see, I want to get over to that character over there. Don't just hold the arrow key until you get there. It's use the motion that will get you there.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do that sometimes too. I use 5J a lot. I think is that 5 down or
5J is better than JJ. So
right. It was like if I'm trying to jump through like a log file real quick, or 55J or 55, whatever it happens, K, whatever it happens to be that I need to get to.
Yeah.
If I'm jumping up the log file really quick. But one thing that's actually been interesting too is with some of the homework that I did just to get my NeoVim stuff set up, it does relative lines, right? I guess relative file lines, right? Which is pretty cool. So I can look and say, oh, that's 15 up, right? And I can just 15 or whatever it is.
The only downside of relative line numbers is when you're pairing and someone's like, oh, line up, because as you're moving,
Yeah.
you're changing.
moving,
Line
yeah.
96. Right. So it's
Right.
like at that point you just kind of jump to the top, right? And then go like 96 and then or whatever. If you try to get to like line 96.
Sometimes when I'm pairing with JMac, I'll just go set number and
Yeah.
get rid of the relative numbers. Yeah, set no rel. I think we'll get rid of them.
It's
Nice,
definitely it definitely makes it much easier for Vimmers to move around, where you can move relatively to where your cursor is. I think if you're not experienced with that, and like especially when you're pairing and someone's looking and they're trying to say like go to this line, then it can be. And I've heard that from multiple people that it's like, as I said, if you're not used to it, it's an adjustment. And I didn't use relative line numbers for the longest time, and my argument was always that it's too much stuff going on. Like I can just see these
Sure.
numbers moving, but
Yeah, I get that.
you
Right.
can make them quite dim in your theme,
Yeah.
such that they're like you can see them if you look at them, but if you're not focusing on them, you don't really notice them. And so really the only thing that stands out is the current line number. So yeah, it's a lot of these things that you kind of learn over time, and as we said last episode, it's not the same for every person. Like different people will respond in different ways, and they'll have different mnemonic devices, and something that works for me might not work for you, and whatever else. And this is where it comes back to like, don't just clone someone's dot files. Don't just like pick up someone else's stuff that is tuned for them, because that might not make sense to you.
Yeah, we share it so you can see like what we're doing, but not so that it can be like copied verbatim. And like my dot files, I've got all these forks, and I'm like, why are you forking my dot files?
Yeah. I had someone send me a pull request once, and whilst generally I appreciate people sending pull requests, they're like, oh,
That's
it'd be
hilarious.
better to do this way. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. These are my dot files. If you want, like, don't, this indicates to me that you're trying to copy this and just use
Get
it.
off my lawn.
Yeah. Just fork it and do your own thing.
Okay, so I wanna come back to one thing real quick that is very much a basic deal before I jump into some of the other stuff I want to talk about, which is, again, maybe jumping ahead a bit, but that's okay. Window management. So I was talking about window management. I want to talk about, Michael blew my mind with like get branches last time or something, which I don't even want to get into that. We don't have time for that this episode.
Yeah.
Not get branches, but like, was that what it was? Get branches?
Yeah, work trees.
Work trees. That I don't have time to get into that. I don't can't do that today. So but like window management, command line, like how do I get to like a command? How do I get to like a Z shell and while I'm in Vim? And then lastly, what was it? Where's one other thing?
Didn't you write this down? Isn't it in Notion?
I did, but I have so many notes now. It's like hard to find. Anyway, okay, here's the one thing I want to talk about before we get into that is leaders, okay? So leaders, again, just to make sure I understand, in any mode that I'm in, whether it's insert mode or normal mode or command mode even, I guess maybe probably not command mode. Let's say not that. Let's say normal mode or insert mode. I can have like nmap or imaps in my Vim config, whatever, right? And so a leader key is just something that allows me to access those mapped keys or commands or whatever. Is that a correct understanding of what a leader key is, or is there more to it that I'm missing?
So the way I would describe the leader key is it's a prefix or a namespace for your own personal mappings. So Vim comes with all sorts of mappings out of the box. And so if you want to like add your own, it's hard to find like if you want to keep them mnemonic, it's hard to actually find some mnemonics that aren't already used by something built in Vim. And I generally don't want to override any of Vim's native stuff. I'd rather like use the defaults where possible. So the leader is really handy as a prefix that you push first, and then whatever you type after that is generally going to be like a free area where you can like not have collisions with any other built-in mappings. So I don't know anyone that would use it in insert mode, because like unless your leader key is something that doesn't type a character you ever want to type. I've never seen a leader in insert mode. My leader is space, so having like space in insert mode would be wild, because I type space like my test nearest is like leader TN, so space TN. I'm probably going to type that in insert mode and not want to run a test. So
right, sure, right, yeah. I think we actually, Michael and I may have done a insert mode like mapping last episode just to be, I don't know, Just because I was trying to figure out, like, if I wanted to, I can't remember if we did that or not, if it was a normal mode mapping.
We did
I don't
run
remember.
through a mapping, but I think it was just a normal mode mapping to delete a line or a duplicate a line or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yep, duplicated line. Yep.
I hardly have any insert mode mappings, but one that I do have that's really interesting and maybe is a good example of one is if I type 2 semicolons or 2 commas, it will automatically kind of remove those. Well, it won't remove them because the mapping won't ever actually insert them, but it'll basically move the cursor to the end of the line and put the semicolon or the comma there. So I can be anywhere in the middle of a line in insert mode. And this is kind of common if I'm typing something, I then do open single quotes. It'll automatically put the opening, the closing single quote after me. So I'm typing. If I want to get the comma at the end of that line, instead of going like escape and then $ to get to the end of the line and then append comma, I can just type comma in insert mode and it'll do that all automatically for me. And I never normally want to type 2 commas or 2 semicolons in insert mode.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
That's useful, like you say, with when you're in quotes, anywhere where you're doing like automatic pairing. If you've got if you open a paren or a square bracket or whatever, and you've got Vim set up to automatically insert the next one. But if you're doing like an array and you've got single quote, key, arrow, single quote, whatever, your cursor is now in the middle of the quote, but you need to put the trailing comma on that array. The mapping for comma will then do that. And I was talking to someone, I can't remember who, and they had set up that mapping so it would set a mark so that it would.
Oh, it was Eric Van Johnson.
It was Eric, right? Where he set up, so he's got the double comma. It would go to the end of the line, insert the comma, and because it had registered a mark, it would then go back to where the cursor was before that insert.
Cool.
So
I feel like mostly though when I do that, I probably want to hit return and go to the next line.
Return the next
but
line,
obviously,
yeah.
I can go escape and then press O to go to the next line anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And then Michael taught me about those magic things too. So like an angle bracket return or whatever. So like in your little mappings, you can do that sort of magic, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you can do a whole heap of stuff in there. You can have mappings that sort of act as a way to shortcut like several keystrokes to carry out a motion or something. You could have mappings often are used to reach plugin methods and things like that. To bring up auto completion or to insert a use statement. If you've forgotten to do it for whatever reason, you can go back and grab that and do your insert. All kinds of things.
Yeah.
So
like my tab key, for example, has an insert mode mapping. I didn't have to create it myself because the completion library I'm using maps it for me. But when I push tab in insert mode, it's basically triggering the completion menu if there's anything that can be completed and to step through the items in the menu. So technically that's an insert mode mapping.
Ah, interesting. So when you have that comma, that's an insert mode map. Like, do you do comma IMAP or colon IMAP in your Vim config, and then comma is like is that how that works, or is there a different way to map that?
No, just IMAP, comma, and then whatever the I think it would be like escape, $, comma would probably be everything you need, and then maybe you want to go back into insert mode afterwards.
So in that case, you don't have to use your leader key, right? Because it's just like there's nothing mapped to comma, so you're not going to have to override anything, right? So it's like, yeah. Okay, that's helpful.
The mappings in insert mode are different from the mappings in normal mode. So even if you had a comma mapping in normal mode, you might have a different one in insert mode, and they'd need to be different because if you're in insert mode, the first thing your mapping needs to do is escape out of insert mode to go to normal mode to jump to the end of the line. Whereas if you wanted to do a comma one in normal mode, it's already in normal mode, so it can go straight to the end of the line.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
They're like little macros, basically.
Yeah, they are. That's like kind of what I realized when I was doing it with Michael. I was like, oh, you can literally do anything. You can literally do anything in here.
The thing that's great about text objects is like if I delete in single quotes, and that word is 10 characters long, and then I move the cursor somewhere else, and the word is, 14 characters long inside the quotes, I can just push the dot to repeat that, and it doesn't go, delete 10 characters. It still goes delete the text object.
Delete the last, do the last command, yeah.
Combine those with mappings as well. It means that you can operate on a text object regardless of how long it is. So you don't have to only operate on a 10 character wide thing. You're describing the object, the word, whatever it is.
And that's super useful if you're
that's so
doing
cool.
like string replacement, if you're doing a change in word, rather than doing like trying to go to the start of the word and then do like CE to change to the end of the word. And as you say, the length of the lines might be different. So your cursor ends up in a different place. So you end up missing like the first letter or the first two characters of that thing. And so that's where the word objects are much more useful, because you're able to operate on that entire word irrespective of where your cursor happens to land. And you might land outside of it, and then you have to sort of go back a couple of characters. You could do like Shift F, single quote, if you need to go back to the start of the thing, the word, and things like that. So there's so many different little motions that you can use to sort of, again, it's all about editing text quickly.
Yeah, there's one I did really want to talk about because it's not built into Vim, and I feel like it should be, which is it'd be surround.vim, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it provides a command that works with text objects to change the surrounding quotes or surrounding parenthesis. So I can be inside a quoted word that's quoted in double quotes, and I can go CS double quote single quote, which is basically change surrounding double quotes to single quotes.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do that all the time. That's like a really, really common thing that I do. And because if you combine that with Vim repeat, it makes that action repeatable. So say I've copied like a PHP array definition and I want to turn it into a JSON one. I want to really quickly turn all the single quotes to double quotes. I can go CS double quote single quote, CS single quote double quote, and then just move down and just keep hitting dot and basically replace all of them. There's obviously other ways to do that option, but on a small thing, it's kind of nice to be able to just repeat that action. So to me, surround.vim and repeat.vim, I don't know why they aren't actually like in Vim by default, because it's one of the plugins that to me feels like it really honors the Vim like philosophy of how things work with text objects and all that sort of stuff. And yeah,
surround,
I can't get around that.
Vim, repeat, Vim. 2 new plugins I need to install.
And you'll also, it's kind of unrelated, I guess, but you'll need a comment plugin, because like Vim doesn't come with a way to comment code out of the box, which to me is weird. Like you can obviously use visual block mode and like select down a whole thing.
Sure.
But that's pretty janky to use.
Yeah.
So I use one called Vim Commentary, which is also made by T-Pope, who made the other ones. And it gives you text objects and commands to kind of describe commented things. So I can just go GCC and comment a whole line, all that sort of stuff.
Nice. T-Pope. I got it all written down. Okay, folks. So here's where we're at. Window management, which I don't know if that's the correct term for it. And I'm also interested in like project management as well. So maybe we should start at that level. So let's say that you have a brand new project that you're pulling down. I've created a new site that I want your guys' help on, and it's called lumen.industries. And I want to hide some Easter eggs in this thing, so you guys are going to pull down this code. So you pull down the code, you've got it into a location, into a folder, whatever. Do you make that into like a project? Like when you're going to go into that, like obviously probably depends, but this is going to be a long-term project you're going to be working on. For me, if I'm coming from PHP Storm, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open it in PHP Storm, and then I'm going to, it's going to ask me like, is this like a project? Like, where is the root location? Is there anything you want to exclude from what we're going to be indexing and all that stuff? Do you guys have, and then once I do that, it saves it as like, what do you want to name this project? And I want to name this project Lumen. Okay, so then the next time I open PHP Storm, I've got a list of projects that I can select from. I want to open Lumen, right? And it's going to come right back to where I was at the last time I was in there. It's going to have everything open exactly how it was, right? How does that work for you guys? What is your process for that? Do you have a concept of projects? What does it look like for you, Jess?
So I think there are ways of doing this sort of thing in Vim itself, but for me, I don't kind of use Vim in that way. I use Tmux to handle the project side of things.
Okay.
Because often I've got other tools open that aren't Vim that are still related to that project. So Tmux can have sessions. So I basically have one session per project, and a session is effectively just a group of tabs, which are windows, I think, in Tmux speak, but effectively think of them as tabs. So I can switch between different sessions and have a whole new set of tabs open. And one of those will be Vim. Another one might be Artisan Serve or Sail Up. Another one might be like a PSQL to connect to the database. One might be tailing a log file. And so I can quickly switch between different projects and have all their things still open, like down the bottom. In order to get to those projects, because there is a thing called Tmuxinator that Michael mentioned, I think, last episode, where you can set up some defaults of like where things live, and you create like a little YAML file that has the root directory and what windows you want to open by default. I don't tend to go that far with it. I've got some mappings in Tmux for common projects I use. So Tmux has a thing like a leader key. I think they call it the prefix key. And I think mine's like control space, so it's like
mine's like control B, I think, is like what it is by default, maybe.
Default,
yeah. So I have some that are like, control space, and then I just do shift Q. Like basically all the letters across the top of my keyboard will go to different projects.
Interesting.
And it'll basically open a brand new Tmux session in that directory. But I don't have it automatically open a whole bunch of tabs and apps for me. I don't mind going Sail Up and then open up another tab and go Vim. I also have, and this was kind of thanks to the Primogen, a mapping that I think it's like control space F, and it'll open up a fuzzy finder that's set in my code directory, like the root directory where all my code projects are. And so I can type the name of a project that I don't use very often, so I don't have a mapping for it, and hit enter, and it'll open a Tmux session in that directory. And I don't have my Tmux sessions so they survive a reboot. I know you can get like Resurrect or something that will kind of save those sessions. But for the most part, like if sometimes I accidentally close terminals. Don't know how it happens, but with Tmux, I just open the terminal, type Tmux again, and I'm back where I was, which is nice.
Yeah.
Interesting. So your sessions just continue to live in the background then. So like if you've had, if you haven't restarted your computer in a week, you have like 15 Tmux sessions open in the background.
Yeah, sometimes I'll go and kill them because like they might all have like Docker processes running, and
right, exactly, yeah.
Have, like one database for every project kind of thing, so it's gonna slow things down. The thing with the mappings I've got and also that fuzzy finder is that if the session's not already open, it will create it, but if the session already is open, it'll just switch over to it. Okay.
So,
and I really like that mental model of I don't care whether something's open or not, I just want to get to it and have it solve the rest. It's the same with like an application switcher. So in Linux, I've got like a little thing that'll do a fuzzy find of applications. You just switch the
like Spotlight or Alfred almost, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and it kind of does the work of going, this is already open, I'll switch to that, versus this isn't open, I'll open it and then switch to it.
So when you open, so like what do you use for your terminal? You use like iTerm or you use like Hyper, or what do you use?
So I'm on Linux, so I use one called Kitty.
Yes, Kitty, of course.
Yeah, so like the TTY on the end, because like they're like a TTY, so it's KITTY.
Of course, all us Linux people know about Kitty. Come on, I knew.
I'm pretty sure Mac has Kitty.
I think it runs on Mac as well, yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course, Kitty. Yeah.
Technology uses it. So it's a good.
I'm just trying to act smarter than I am, Jess. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about it.
I think the appeal of it, there's a few things. It uses like the GPU to render, so it's
that is actually pretty awesome, yeah.
And it supports like font ligatures and custom line heights and all that. So it's
very nice.
I'm sure iTerm does the same, but on Linux I don't have iTerm. So.
See, that's part of the crazy part of this whole thing is it's like, and I'm going to jump back to like the whole Tmux thing. Here's my question so I can get it out, which is when you open a shell, does it automatically open Tmux? That's my first question. Okay, second thing I was going to say, that's my question so I don't forget it. But it is crazy to me that like, you have like 5 different tools. It's like Tmux is like what's handling my projects. And then it's like I'm using Command Shift Space, which is a Tmux thing, or Command Space F, which is like a Tmux thing, which is looking through my directories. And then once I open my Tmux session, then I'm opening Vim over here, which is just for the editing portion of it. But then I've got also a Z shell window over here that's running serve. And then I've got another one that's running, I don't know. It's just, the funny thing is I do the same thing. Like I'm running Table Plus to get to my database, right? And I'm using like PHP monitor to switch between versions of PHP. But it's just like for me in my brain, it's like my terminal is doing one thing, right? And so for me, like switching from that's my headspace. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to be in the terminal, I'm going to be in Vim. How do I replicate all the things I do in my current editor? It's like, no, Vim's not supposed to do all those things. It's just the editor, right? That's all it's supposed to do. And it's like all that other stuff you're talking about are other tools. So you're just going to glue the pieces together. Right? You've got this little, these Legos. You're going to just stack them up together to kind of get that same functionality. So that's interesting. Okay, so Tmux, when you open Kitty, does that automatically launch your Tmux session? Because if you're doing like command or control space F, you're only doing that inside a Tmux session. Or are you getting into Kitty and then typing Tmux and then control space F, or what is it? How does that work for you?
So I don't have it automatically open Tmux. I normally only have one terminal session running on my computer at a time, but there are occasionally times where I want to open it up to, I don't know, install some system updates or something. I just want a quick dedicated terminal for that. So I kind of prefer it just dropping me to a shell. In order to get into Tmux, I would normally type, I've got an alias called T, which runs that same fuzzy finder. But I also normally have one Tmux session that I just call Jess. It's basically my generic Tmux session. And I've just got a few system-related things. They're not related to a project. They're things that like handle my webcam, because I've got like a DSLR that, is a virtual webcam. So there's a little bit of software I need to run for that. So I have one like.
So it's kind of always running in the background. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I normally just kick that session off when I first boot the computer. That's like the main session, and then every other one is a project one.
Interesting. So you say you press T, and that just does that Command Shift space, or it opens Tmux and then press Command Shift. I keep saying Command Shift space. Command space F. It just does that short form.
Yeah. So T is just an alias that runs the script. So it's T enter. It's about like a command, right? You're just typing T enter, and it'll then open that fuzzy finder. But for the most part, I'm normally starting a Tmux session like my little base one, and from that point on, every time I type Tmux, it just drops me into that. But I normally only ever have one terminal, so one window into Tmux, and then the multiple sessions inside there. And to make things really quick, like I normally only have one browser window as well, right? So I've got on my machine the super key or the Windows key or whatever you want to call that key. If I do that and 1, it'll take me to the terminal. So like super 1 is terminal, super 2 is browser. And most of my life is then just switching between those two windows. So I just use that to quickly switch between them. And it's a similar thing. If the terminal's not open, Super 1 will open the terminal. It'll open my main terminal and get me there. Similar for the browser. And I'm just switching between those. And then once I'm in the terminal, I'm then switching between Tmux sessions, and inside those, switching between tabs. And then inside the tabs, maybe even switching between Vim panes. So
okay. Yeah. That makes sense. How about for you, Michael? Is that similar to your story, or how do you usually handle projects?
So mine's a little bit different to the way that Jess has it set up. So I've got iTerm running on a Mac, and my Z shell is configured to basically every time it opens a new session, it will see, am I running inside Tmux? And if not, it will start a session. If a session exists, it'll reattach to it. If it doesn't, then it'll start a new one. So I'm always in.
You're always in Tmux land, yeah.
And that's largely because, like, again, if I accidentally close iTerm, like I want to be able to get back to where I was without having to go and restart everything and set it all up and whatever else. So it's always there. And I've got no hesitations then in just killing iTerm. Like if I want to restart for an update, I know that if I close it and reopen, I can get back to where I was before I did that. And then in terms of projects, I don't really do projects in the way that I think you would do it within PHP Storm. I have in Z Shell, you can set like a CD path, and what that does is it appends directories. So when you type a directory name, it knows if it doesn't see that directory where you are currently in your current working directory, it will then go and cycle through your CD paths to see, does this directory exist there? So I have in my home directory a directory called code, and inside of that code directory, I have like one directory for every project that I've got.
Yep,
so there's like then ping me's there, or I've got work stuff in there or whatever. And so I can just type then ping me from anywhere in any directory, and it'll find it and it'll take me straight to that directory. So it's like then ping me nvm enter, and I'm into it. And then for me, I keep one session for each project in Tmux, and then I've always got access to everything, and I can just switch between them. So I've got control A prefix J, I think, set up, and then that will show me all of the running sessions with the fuzzy finder, and then I can just jump between them. And you know, that's just a really quick way of having like all of my stuff accessible that I'm going to be moving between. I used to have like windows, so I'd have like one session open and then jump between windows and have them named for the project. But I think it was Jose Soto who sort of took me down the path of doing it this way, where it's like one session per thing, and then you can have like one window has got Vim in it that might have some splits, Tmux Split set up to run like npm run serve or LazyGit or whatever, and then you might or you might have that in a separate window. You know, you might just put that out of the way so you don't have to look at it while it's going. But I've almost always got two splits open. One is like 3/4 Vim, and then I'll have like
and these are your Tmux splits, not Vim splits, to be clear.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so those are different. I mean, those are different key mappings to say like this is how I do a Tmux split versus this is how I do a Vim split, because you can do both, right? You could do a Vim split, or you can do like a Tmux split.
Yep, that's right. So
Yeah,
I've got.
I have a.
Go on.
I was going to say I have a plugin that creates a mapping to switch between the splits, but it will also work inside Vim. So I can just use, I think, Control and then HJKL.
Oh,
and
nice.
It kind of automatically knows whether the next window is a Tmux one or a Vim one. I think it's a Chris Toomey plugin.
It is a Chris Toomey one,
like, I think you need like part of it in Tmux and part of it in Vim, so it can kind of they work together. But it makes that whole window, traversing kind of a lot more seamless.
Is it hard to tell ever, like which one is which? I mean,
really.
Maybe not, because you kind of know if you're looking at the Vim ones.
Yeah, like
you can tell,
window
like
borders
the borders are slightly different. Yeah, Tmux will highlight like the active pane as well, so it's easy to sort of tell. But I've always got sort of Vim in a 3/4 split, and then so there'll be like Vim in 3/4, and then the other column, the other quarter will be usually unit test. So when I'm running tests, it uses the split and does the running of tests there. So
interesting. That was what I was going to ask next, actually, is like, so when you run your TN, right, test nearest or whatever, does it pipe that output to that Tmux window over there then? How does it know to do that?
Yep. So it's part of the Vim test plugin. So it gives you a number of different test strategies.
Another plugin. So you can say, I'm going to write this one down.
You can say like, do you want to use flow term, or do you want to use the built-in terminal in NeoVim, or do you want to open like a split or a new buffer, or do you want to send it to a Tmux pane? So I've got it set to a Tmux
interesting.
pane.
Very cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it will, if there isn't a split open, it'll open the split and then send the output there. So it'll take the PHP unit command and run it. It's a bit odd sometimes in that it will mostly always send the PHP unit command to the right or to the pane that you're expecting, but sometimes like I might have Tinker open and it sends it to the Tinker
thing. It's like a separate session, so
and so it's just like, or I've got like a PHP file open in Vim in another split because I was looking at something else, and suddenly I've got like all of this stuff just pasted in there. So it works 99% of the time, but that's something to be aware of for new players. It's a minor
that makes sense. So
So
with the Vim test plugin, you can specify like which sort of place you want to send it. Because that was another thing for me, is it's like, okay, so if I'm in Vim and I have this mapping where I'm saying TN for test nearest, is that opening a new split in Vim, or is it opening something in Tmux? But that helps to explain it for me.
Yeah, whatever you can figure.
The three things that I typically have, like when I'm in PHP Storm, there's four. Number one, sidebar. Now I don't use it often, right? I'm typically like fuzzy searching through my files in my project. Which I'm sure is another Vim plugin, guys, right? Am I right here?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So Vim actually, depending on your flavor of Vim, like if you're using NeoVim, that you've got Telescope, so that's kind of built in.
Okay, so Telescope. I have like one that's like Control P or something like that, and it fuzzy searches through my. Okay. So there's that. I have a sidebar, which I sometimes look at, like depending on how far I sometimes I just need to see, like I want to see my sidebar over here. Okay, there's that. So that's one thing. If I press like Command 0, that gets me just to like drops me in a shell, right? So I can do whatever I want from there. So I can run, like npm run prod or whatever, right? Or npm install or composer update or composer require, whatever, right? So it drops me into shell. So that's one. If I press Command 9, it shows me here's the current state of your working branch, right? Here's all of your files that have been modified. I can see the modifications that have been made on each one of them. This is like git diff, right? But it's just like it's a new little pane, right? You could call it a split. And then I have Control-Shift-R, which runs my nearest test, and that opens in a new little split as well, right? So essentially, those are the sort of things I have to solve. I'm guessing my sidebar, my directory navigation is probably going to happen in Vim if I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's probably not a sidebar. It's probably not going to be a sidebar. It's probably going to be like a full screen thing or what?
It can be a sidebar.
Yeah, it can be.
I know Michael's very anti the sidebar.
Jess, what do you think?
I
You have a sidebar?
I
Okay.
have one called, I think, NVim Tree. I
Okay.
don't use it very often, but there are times where I do kind of like having a sidebar. So yeah, I don't have it open by default. I kind of toggle it on and then toggle it off whenever, on the few chances, like the few occasions I need it.
Okay, so let's talk about the dropping into a shell. That's just going to be handled in Tmux, and that's just going to be a Tmux split, right? You're just going to have another split below or whatever, and you can close that pane if you want to. You don't need it anymore. Because like for me, I just do a Command 0, and it pops open a new split basically, and it's in the bottom of my screen. And as soon as I'm done with that, I can press Command 0, and it turns it off, right? It takes it out. You guys do something similar in Tmux?
Yep. Yeah. So I've just got for that to open up the. I mean, I've always got a pane available, which is just in the shell. So I've got prefix backslash and prefix hyphen set up to open a vertical or a horizontal split respectively. And so I can just, if I don't have one open, I can just run that and it'll go and pop open a new split for me and drops the cursor. So it opens the split and it puts the cursor there ready to go. So I'm in a shell already. And that's nice and easy. For Git, I usually have lazy Git running in a pane as well, so I can just like jump over to that. I do have a keyboard mapping though, which is prefix G, which is a Tmux one, which will open a new Tmux split in the current working directory and open lazy Git.
That makes sense. That's what I would want. Yeah, something like that.
And
current working directory,
and then I can close that, and it'll just close that split straight away.
Yep. Right. So you just do the same prefix that you did, and it just closes it.
Yep.
That's what I would want. I would want something exactly like that. Like if I type this particular Tmux shortcut, I want it to do this particular. I want it to open up this git diff for me over here, right? Or if I run this particular can, which we said prefix slash or whatever, give me a new session, right? Or give me a new split with just drop me in a shell.
Yeah.
What was the other one we said? So like test output. I suppose you could probably have it do the same thing, although I'm not exactly sure how you would do that. If you did test nearest, if you don't have that Tmux pane open,
it will create one for you.
It would automatically create one for you if you didn't have one.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
So mine's a little bit different. I tend to run Vim I don't normally split Tmux very often, so I have Vim running like in a full Tmux window, and I use float term, which is a Vim plugin that will open like a floating terminal in the middle of the screen. It's not actually floating; it kind of looks like it. And so I have that.
And it's not
F1.
It's not actually a separate terminal window either, right? It's just like a modal almost inside of your window.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all controlled by Vim, but it opens up in my shell, so it drops down to Z shell, and so that's where I don't tend to use like any Git GUI like even command line ones. I would like to look into them, but I mostly just use command line Git. So I just push F1, open up my float term. I have it set to take up most of the window, but it just leaves a little bit around the edges for context. I run my Git commands from there, but I also have my test, my test commands also will pop that into that floating terminal. It'll automatically open it and run them in there. And so I can quickly just hide and show it with F1. My screen's not massive, so that's probably why I don't have a lot of splits. And I normally like to open two code documents side by side, so normally test and implementation.
Yeah, I do that too. Yeah.
And I've got some plugins.
And you just do that with Vim splits, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I just use that with Vim splits, and I've got a plugin that will automatically kind of work out what the test file is for a particular implementation. So if I'm in a controller, I can do capital AV, which the A is the alternate file, and V means in a vertical split. So it'll go and find the test for that controller automatically and open it side by side in the split.
That's handy. Yeah, that's really nice, actually. Oh, so
having
cool.
Those two windows open doesn't really leave me any space on my little screen to also have a sidebar with tests and other things.
It's funny because I have a freaking massive ultra wide, but I still don't like to do more than I don't like to do more than like a side by side heads up. That's it. I just want to see them both, like, and that's it. And then if I need to run my tests, I will. Otherwise, hide it. Like, I don't want to see it right now, So,
I will often
okay,
have,
that's cool.
I often have like 3 or 4 splits open. I couldn't even tell you. I suppose if I'm jumping between like related files, so I'll have a controller open, but I'll also have like some action class or service class or something. I'll usually have 3. If I need 4, then you can do a zoom in Tmux, so that 3/4 suddenly becomes the full width of the screen.
Oh, nice.
I did try Flowterm for like tests and things like that. I found it, I don't know what it was. It didn't gel with me, but I do like using it when I'm doing tests in a screencast, because you kind of want to be as efficient as possible with what little screen real estate you have in that regard. So being able to have the test app will kind of pop up in the middle of the screen. And also for people who aren't familiar with, using Vim and all of these things like popping up and appearing and disappearing and things like that, it's more obvious when the test output is like right in the middle of the screen on top of the code, as opposed to like it's appearing over on the side there now. So
yeah.
And that's a good point, because I spend most of my day pairing with Tim McDonald, and so we are often screen sharing, and I think that's like the key, right? Is like having the text a bit larger and not having like too many windows really wide, so my screen's not as big. So I'm trying to do more with less space.
Yeah. Stacks,
yeah.
That's super helpful.
One other thing I do is when I run the test, I pipe it through the Linux command, or just the command called less, which means that it doesn't scroll to the bottom of the test. It actually keeps me at the top of the test.
That's smart.
Which is really helpful, because I normally want to see like the exception that's thrown, not the bottom of the stack trace.
Especially when you get the stack trace. Oh, line 475,000 of Illuminate or vendor Laravel framework.
Like always wanting to go to the top of the test. So I'm like, well, if I just run it through less, which is like basically a pager, it'll keep it at the top automatically.
Hey guys, I would love to keep talking about this for like another hour and a half, but we are at an hour and 11 minutes. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. So. Let me give a quick summary for myself. So, for me, one of the things that I really need to do is I need to go back and watch some of these videos that Jess and Michael have talked about to really get a solid foundation under my feet with these movements. And I love this idea. I now have a vocabulary for this idea of text objects, right? Before it was like a word, paragraph, whatever. No, it's like text object is a great way to think about it, because there's so much, if you use word, there's no idea in your head of this concept of a paragraph. But like when you say text object, it sort of includes those pieces, right? And it could include just the pieces between a set of braces or whatever. That's a text object. So I love that. That was huge for me.
You can also get plugins that will add additional text objects. That are
really? Oh, that's so cool.
Yep.
Oh, genius. So like you could have a text object of like a actual method, maybe. Like that could be a text object.
Yeah, an attribute in HTML. So I can like delete a whole attribute, like, class equals open quotes and then the thing. I can delete the whole thing with one command, which is nice.
That's beautiful. I love that. So that's a brand new concept in my brain now. Like it was never there before. So like I love that. It's super
like
helpful.
changing inside of tags is, I think, changing in and around tags. So delete in the tag and delete including the tag. I think that's Vim native, but if you wanted to like change attributes within a tag.
Yeah, if you want to change like get rid of the alt tag or change the alt tag, I think you need the plugin for that.
Yeah.
And Vim Surround also lets you change, say you want to change like a div to a span. You can go CST, change surrounding tag, and type in the word div, and it'll automatically go and change the opening and the closing one to a span.
Beautiful.
And it'll preserve any attributes if you had attributes. So if you, as you say, if you're changing a span to a div, and you were to do like CST left arrow div and press enter, then it would just change the span to a div and the closing one. But if you were to do like div space class whatever, it will then replace what you had there before with whatever you've given it as a replacement. So all of these kinds of things that, you can do it in other editors, but again, it all comes down to Vim is made for editing text quickly and efficiently. And so all of these things all add up to like lots and lots of save time over
Yep.
the course of your programming existence.
Yeah. So text objects is new. I think I got a little bit more clarification on a leader. I think, and you guys even said this maybe the last show, Michael, but I think it clicked a little bit better for me when we talked about it as like a namespace to avoid collisions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically giving you a brand new canvas to sort of map all of your own stuff onto so that you're not colliding with any native Vim mappings, right? So, comma or space, and then it's like, okay, now the world's your playground. You can do whatever you want now that you're kind of in your own little world here.
Mm-hmm.
Then sort of the this idea of how you guys manage projects. So it seems like there's 100 different ways to do it, but the consensus is that Tmux is the thing that you're going to want to do that, right? So Tmux is its own program. It's got its own set of shortcuts, its own set of bindings, and you can do all sorts of magic in Tmux as well because there's lots of plugins for that too. Actually being able to map things between Vim and Tmux, like pushing output from Vim over to Tmux. That's pretty cool that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or being able to navigate between windows without having to use separate commands to go between a Vim split and a Tmux split. That's pretty awesome because that was like, how do you do that? I've, previously has mentioned things like Vim not Vim Obsession. Is it Vim Obsession?
Yeah,
yes,
Obsession.
It is Vim Obsession. Vim Obsession, and then Tmuxinator or Tmux Resurrection or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Tmux Resurrect. These ideas of like these persistent projects that you can have, or even like YAML files, which will sort of define what's included in some of these Tmux sessions is interesting. It's something that I would possibly look into.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all of that stuff gives me lots of homework to do and helps to add a lot of clarity around how it is that you guys are working inside your environments. And gives me some good stuff to chase down until we meet next time. So that's super helpful. Thank you guys very much for being patient and explaining some of that to me. Hopefully it's helpful not just to me, but to other people who are maybe also trying to learn some of this stuff too.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. Well, this is episode 114. Is that right, Michael? 115. Thanks again, Jess, for joining us. If you'd like to find show notes for this episode, you can find them at north-south.audio/115. Hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions or comments at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at Jess Archer. I'm just kidding. Is that what it is, Jess? Is it Jess Archer? Jess Archer Codes. Okay, I knew there was something else on the end of there. I couldn't remember. Jess Archer Codes, and it's the worst Australian accent ever. Congrats again, Jess, on your position at Laravel. So stoked for you. Well deserved. You've been an awesome member of the Laravel community for a long time, so we're really excited that you're going to be joining the team there. I'm sure lots of good things for the future, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hey, last thing before we go, Jess, we always like to give a quick thanks to people who come on by allowing them to say, hey, this is something I want to plug. Do you have anything that you would like the people, all 10 of them, listening to know about something that you're plugging or anything you're selling or anything that you're working on, any courses or cool stuff that you're doing? Anything you want to plug?
Only like Laravel Shift Workbench would probably be the main thing I work on. So I teamed up with JMac to create the workbench that kind of is like this really opinionated refactoring tool for PHP. It's pretty sweet. So yeah.
I'm glad to know that, Jess, because we are getting ready to go into Workbench land just in a very, very near future. We just shifted everything to Laravel 9. Nope, take that back. We shifted everything to PHP 8, and we are on our way to Laravel 9. So everything, I say shifted, not shifted. We upgraded everything to PHP 8, and we are now on the train to get to Laravel 9. But in the meantime, while we're doing those shifts, we're going to go ahead and do a bunch of other crazy stuff too, and just put that workbench through its paces. So I'll let you know if anything doesn't work. I will be in your Telegram.
Cool.
All right, sounds good.
Love Workbench.
All right, Michael.
Workbench is the only reason that I have Docker installed on my computer.
I actually was going to install Docker, but then I was like, I'm just going to use the web version of it. It'll be fine. So no worries.
Perfect.
Okay, friends. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
See ya.